Hello everyone, what's up? It's Gunnison, and welcome back to Spinning the Tires. Very exciting show today. We had a lot of interesting insights from practice at Bristol Motor Speedway Dirt today, and we're going to get into I think we'll do well and might win this weekend. But first, we have a few other very interesting storylines to cover from earlier in the week. Let's dive right into it. Okay, so first of all, worth covering is NASCAR's Pro Invitational Series race from Wednesday. The Pro Invitational Series race is a virtual simulator race series run on iRacing. iRacing is the world's premier racing simulator, and you can get almost any series, any track in the simulator, in the program. It's pretty impressive. So, NASCAR utilized iRacing to create a sports event, a virtual sports event last year when the COVID-19 pandemic started. And it started sometime in March, went through May, and it was a lot of fun. It was a weekly series, just like regular NASCAR, but virtual. It was an amazing, kind of on the spot thing that NASCAR did, and it was a huge success. It gained over 1 million viewers some weeks, and I think it did bring in some new fans to watch the real races that continued later in the season. So NASCAR's brought it back for a second season. It's a downsized season. Of course, there isn't really a need for it anymore with NASCAR having moved past most of the COVID problem. But it's still a lot of fun. So they're having them about once to twice monthly now. And the first one of this season was on Wednesday at the virtual Dirt Bristol. William Byron, a very experienced iRacer, won the race. That wasn't a big surprise. He ran a great race. But perhaps the most interesting storyline of the week was Timmy Hill. Timmy Hill won a Pro Invitational Series race last year at Virtual Texas, and very experienced on the platform. Great guy, and he is one of NASCAR fans in general favorite people. He's just the kind of guy you have to root for. He's not in very good equipment right now, one of the slower cars in the field, but he has a lot of talent, and people want him to do well, and everybody roots for him, and it's really great to see. But he was excluded from the entry list of the Pro Invitational Series race earlier this week, which was a surprise to some people. But apparently it was because his team, the number 66 of MBM Motorsports, got excluded because of points or NASCAR's charter system, which is kind of complicated, something like that. And understandably, the NASCAR community was not happy about it. So instead of getting super angry, they went and did something. Well, we went and did something. I took part in it. Did something really, really cool. We launched a social media campaign called hashtag Let Timmy Race, a campaign to get him into the Pro Invitational Series race that the NASCAR community feels he deserved. And Austin Cindric, driving the 2 car in the virtual Bristol event, was gracious enough to give his ride over to Timmy Hill. And that was great. And Timmy Hill finished 8th, a very well deserved top 10 finish. So, and the racing quality of this iRace overall was very good. iRacing is a pretty realistic racing simulator, but it obviously, with it being just a simulator and not entirely real physics, it can get pretty chaotic. That was on full display in last year's Pro Invitational. But it was a very great race, actually. There were not a ton of cautions, not a ton of huge wrecks. It felt pretty realistic. The racing quality was good. The winner felt like, he deserved it. And yeah, great race. Racing looked pretty realistic, but you may wonder, well, what we saw on Wednesday in the iRace, does that have any bearing on what we'll see on Sunday and throughout the weekend in real life? At first glance, people might say yes, but actually there were things to indicate otherwise, particularly the racing line. The racing line in the iRace was predominantly the high line of the track up near the wall, but today's practice indicated otherwise. We'll get into that more in a bit. But now let's cover another really big story from this week. NASCAR might be going street circuit racing. So yes, you heard that right, street circuit. NASCAR and iRacing announced on Wednesday, the same day as the Pro Invitational event, that on June 2nd, they would be racing on a new track. The Pro Invitational would be racing on a new track on iRacing that hasn't been built in real life yet. This track is the Chicago Street Circuit. Yes, built on the downtown streets of Chicago, Illinois. NASCAR has had rumors of a street circuit in real life for some time, but for the first time ever, we may have actually had a real hint that something is about to come. This virtual version of the Chicago Street Circuit on iRacing is, of course, pretty cool, but I think what NASCAR fans are really focused on is that this may indicate very soon, within the next year or two maybe, that NASCAR is going racing at this circuit in real life, which would be really cool, because here's my take on it. If NASCAR did this, we would become the racing series of the world that races every single kind of track. IndyCar just races road courses, street circuits, and some 1.5-mile ovals. So that's 3 kinds of tracks. IMSA, the sports car series in America, runs basically 1 kind of track, road courses. They run some street circuits, so we'll say 2 kinds of tracks. Formula One, which, by the way, for the Formula One world, way to get started today with first practice for the Bahrain Grand Prix. An exciting beginning to the Formula One season. Looking forward to see what happens there. But anyway, Formula One, they just run at road courses and street circuits around the world too. So most racing series only run 2 or 3 different kinds of racetracks. NASCAR, if they go to a street circuit, would run at 6 different kinds of racetracks. Short tracks, super speedways, 1.5 miles, road courses, street circuits, and dirt tracks. That covers about every racetrack, every type of racetrack in the world. So if they did that, NASCAR would establish themselves as the series that runs everything. And personally, I think that would be pretty cool. So if this gets announced as something real in the near future, I'm all for it because I think this is going to be very, very cool. As for the city they're planning this in, Chicago, there are a few other cities I think of more when I think of street circuits, but the big perk of NASCAR going to Chicago is actually this year Chicagoland Speedway in Joliet, Illinois, lost its date on the NASCAR Cup Series schedule, meaning that people up in that northern Midwest area, they're kind of lost their racing. They lost their local race. If NASCAR went racing in the Chicago streets, that would kind of bring it back to that audience, which I think would be very good for everyone up there to have their racing back. So now let's take a look at today's events. So today NASCAR saw some very interesting practice sessions, 2 each for both the Truck Series and the Cup Series. Today we're going to focus on the Cup Series events. But first, I'd like to go over who I think will do well this week. So coming into this weekend, there were a few kind of obvious drivers that in the field that are established on dirt, established in the Cup Series, and all around should do a great job this weekend. Kyle Larson drives the number 5, and he, just about every weekday, you can find him at some local dirt track running and probably winning a race. Christopher Bell, he's already won a Cup race this season. I should mention, as has Kyle Larson. He won at Las Vegas Motor Speedway. Austin Dillon and Corey LaJoie as well were good picks, as well as several other drivers in the field. But there are also a few dirt specialty drivers that have come in this weekend, namely Stuart Friesen, Chris Windom, Mike Marlar, and Shane Golobic. There's a common thread between all of these drivers in that they're all kind of dirt racers by trade, and they're all running in cars that are more underfunded, that don't have as much speed in them. And also, these are guys that are making their first ever Cup Series starts. So, but I think even though this is their first start for all these guys, I think they're capable, just because they're good on dirt, I think they're capable of getting these smaller teams a great finish this weekend. Maybe even some top 15s, maybe even a top 10 finish for some of these drivers. So watch out for them this weekend as well. As for specifically who I think is going to win, I really can't tell you. After watching practice today, I'm really open to anything. I have no idea who's gonna win. It's so all over the place. It's gonna be very interesting to watch. I'm not going into this race with a solid pick to win. I just want to see the racing because this season has been so unpredictable anyway. It's just almost impossible to know who will win this weekend. Now that being said, I think some people kind of want to put either Kyle Larson or Christopher Bell in this weekend as kind of a shoe-in for the win, but not so fast because there are a lot of good drivers in this field that are good on dirt, and those that aren't experienced on dirt, from what I saw in practice today, they're learning fast. So, yeah, now before we get into some other things, let's talk about the weather. The weather this weekend does not look great. There's a possibility of rain on both tomorrow, Saturday, and Sunday. So, normally rain for NASCAR means a delay. But we're in an interesting situation here because rain at a dirt track does, as indicated in the practice broadcast today, does not necessarily mean stoppage of the race and that they'll have to postpone it. It doesn't automatically mean that. In fact, in order to race properly on a dirt track, you have to have it a little bit moist. In fact, they'll run water tanker trucks over the track pre-race to soften up the dirt a little bit. So a little rain won't hurt. The concern is with lightning. If there's lightning nearby the track, NASCAR has to stop the race for about half an hour. And also, if it starts downpouring, the track will just become mud. The track crew will have to redo the track surface, and they'll have to wait about a day to get back going. So there is the concern of weather, but it's about 50-50. There is the good chance we do get some, if not all, of the racing in the next couple days. But let's go over the schedule for the next couple days, by the way. So we had practice today. Then we have our qualifying heat races tomorrow. Each one of those, there are 4 of them, will determine the starting lineup for the main event. And Sunday, of course, at 1:30 Mountain Time is the main event. So another thing I want to go over is on the track. This is kind of random, kind of weird, but the track put in these, they call them dirtles. They're based off of turtles, which are a really big curb they put in at some of the road courses to keep drivers from overshooting the track or taking a corner too deep. There are little bumps in the track. You really don't want to hit them. They can mess your car up a lot. So they've installed these dirtles at the Bristol dirt track, and they're these little painted white squares. They're kind of bumpy, big bumps in the track, way down on the bottom line, and they're meant to discourage drivers from going all the way down to the bottom lane. And they're interesting. I get the concept, but I'm just not sure if they're necessary. If you hit it wrong, it can really mess your car up, even spin you out. But overall, I don't think it's that big of a deal. We saw everyone run around those pretty clean in practice today. So, but I've mentioned practice plenty. Let's actually get to what happened in practice today. So I wasn't able to watch all of both practices, but I was able to watch a majority of it. And several interesting storylines came out of it. First of all, a couple guys topped the speed charts in each practice that I'm not sure any of us really expected to. The first practice was won by Alex Bowman, driving the 48 for Hendrick Motorsports, and he finished second in the second practice as well. So he had consistently good speed all day. And Ryan Blaney, last week's winner in Atlanta, he won the second practice. So both of those are examples of the young talent moving up in NASCAR. So impressive runs from both of those guys. A few other interesting storylines from today were, for one, the racing line. I think going into this weekend, everybody kind of expected this to be a multi-groove racetrack, people all over the place, and we saw some of that today. Um, but really, it kind of became a one-groove racetrack. There was a preferred groove down at the bottom of the track. People just started running that and just kind of made it stick for the whole practice. You'd move up the track if you wanted to make a move or something, but for the most part, people tried to stick to the bottom, which is very interesting because the old, from the 80s, 90s, the old paved Bristol track was like that. Um, Everybody would go down to the bottom, move up top to make a daring move from time to time if they needed to. So, in a way, it's kind of cool because it brings back the old school Bristol feel in a way. Another storyline from today's practice that's very important is Kyle Larson will have to make an engine change before the races this weekend, which is very interesting because he is the favorite, arguably, for this weekend's race. And this has some big implications because changing an engine in NASCAR means that you must fall to the back of the field. And what really stings for Kyle Larson here is that he not only has to fall to the back of the field in the main event, he has to fall to the back of the field for the start of tomorrow's heat race as well. So he's going to have to fight his way up there quite a bit. And I do think he can do it, though. He's very, very strong on dirt today. He had good times in both practices today. So I think he can get the job done and might be able to pull off a win even from all the way in the back. But we'll see how that goes. Another just kind of random interesting storyline I saw today, the 53 car of JJ Yaley. Yaley's interesting because he has a lot of dirt experience, but on 2 or 3 occasions today he spun out. So I just wonder, some of these guys that race a lot of dirt, is some of that almost too much experience? Like, do they have too much experience in other cars that it's too hard to adjust to racing the cup car on dirt? I'm not sure if that's the case, just an interesting hypothesis. The last storyline I wanted to go over from this is the tire wear. Goodyear brought in a new tire for this week, one that has this interesting tread that provides grip on the dirt, but it makes sure the dirt doesn't cling to it. It, as they say, it evacuates the dirt, gets it off the tire, so it doesn't become clogged. But going into today's practice, I don't think people expected tire wear on these tires. I think people just expected um, these drivers to go into this practice, to this race, and just run their race without any real tire wear, that they wouldn't have to change tires. But no, these tires showed considerable signs of wear throughout the day, which are very interesting because I don't think drivers on Sunday were planning to make really any pit stops very often for tires. But if this is the case, if these tires wear off so fast, they might have to make some pit stops during the race, which would be to make it more interesting. So yeah, it was very interesting to see those tires wear that much. I mean, obviously the tires are going to wear, but I don't think anybody expected it quite that much. Last couple things I want to go over for today. I want to go over who I have picked for the heat races tomorrow evening. So for the heat races, in the first heat, I think the winner is going to be the 5 of Kyle Larson. Even though he has to start from the back, I think he'll get up to the top there. It's only a 10-car field, I think. By the way, each one of these heats is 15 laps long. And then for these heats, NASCAR also has a rule in place where you get part of your starting position on Sunday will be based off of your passing points in these heats. So based off just basically how many cars you pass. So in my mind, I think Anthony Alfredo will do well on passing points in the first heat. Second heat, I have Michael McDowell, our Daytona champion, winning that, and then Chris Buescher doing well with passing. Heat 3, I have the 48 of Alex Bowman winning it, and then the 37 of Ryan Prix doing well on passing. And then the fourth and final heat, I have Corey LaJoie winning with the 9 of Chase Elliott, last year's champion, doing well with passing points. And now finally, I need to address for sure what kind of race I think Sunday's race will be. I've heard out there a lot of hypotheses about 3 different outcomes of this race on Sunday, and they're all pretty reasonable hypotheses that keep it simple and understandable. Theory 1 basically is that this race is an absolute mess, nothing but wrecks, cautions. Theory number 2 is that it's an amazingly entertaining race. Not a copious amount of wrecks, but yet great multi-groove racing, and lots of surprises, lots of great moves, but not a ton of incidents to leave a bad taste in your mouth. And then the third and final result is that this turns out to be a boring one groove race that really is. So we'll see whichever one of those happens, but I personally have a 4th opinion on this. Personally, I want to lean toward option 2, just because everybody in today's practice handled the dirt so well, even the people that were new. I mean, there were only a few spins in practice today. I think we expected people to be spinning all over the place, but that wasn't the case at all. Everybody ran really well, so I don't think it's going to be complete chaos for the whole race, that is. I think when we get started, people are going to be kind of, on the edge of their seats, nervous. I think we'll see a lot of incidents toward the beginning of the race, but as we move through the race, it's going to move more toward option 2, and it's just going to be good, entertaining. The high line of the racetrack will probably come in by that point. So I think it's going to be a mix of both options 1 and 2, actually. So that's my opinion on how Sunday's Food City Dirt Race will be. So those are my opinions on this race weekend, on who might do well, and the other storylines that have come in throughout the week. So I will see you all next week as we get ready for the next race and we recap the Dirt Bristol race. Have a great weekend. Enjoy the racing. Let me know in the comments what you thought of practice today, your opinions on everything we talked about, and I will see you all next week. So you have a great weekend, and this is Gunnison signing off with Spinning the Tires.